believe that the World War III can begin in Europe. You've been living here in Europe for many, many years. So do you feel that there is some nation in Europe capable of fighting in the war, that there is some ability to create war in Europe at the moment?
Well, go back to 1914 and the First World War, and the trigger for that was in Sarajevo. It was the assassination of the Archduke. And what you have, and that's why I mentioned the extension eastward of NATO, the existence of NATO today in 2009, almost 20 years, 2 decades after the collapse of the Soviet Union, is a dinosaur in terms of world political affairs and world political and peaceful relations. Instead, we should be putting that money in investment in infrastructure to build up the former Soviet and Warsaw Pact economies and not build up the military capacities. I have been a number of times in Russia in the last years, and the evidence that I see is they are very, very weary of this Cold War constant state of tension with the West, and I don't see any desire to make a war of conquest again. I think that era is over.
Mention one view or theory. A lot of people write, I mean analysts and some special sources aimed on the evolution of the world crisis, that it's possible that a kind of war might become an only possibility to the United States to solve the situation in which United States are now. And I've been thinking that it might be something like the 11th of September, but happening somewhere in some other place. For instance, some authors write that it might happen in Pakistan, a kind of war between India and Pakistan. A kind of nuclear war, what is very important. But I think that really, as far as United States didn't plan, as I feel, and have never planned to give the money back that they owed from the world. So they need some event to say that everything what happened before, like World War I, World War II. What do we know about the money system before the World War I and after the World War I? It was a very, very big difference. Not only the empire's fall, but all the money.
The power of money shifted.
Yes, it shifted. So, what is your opinion?
I think, well, there are 2 pillars of American power after 1945. One pillar is the establishment of New York as the financial center of world finance and world money power, displacing the city of London, which had dominated since the Napoleonic Wars in 1815. The second pillar of American power has been the overwhelming military supremacy over all contenders. Now, during the Cold War, you had a serious counterweight to that power on the military side through the Soviet Union Warsaw Pact. The end of the Cold War created a situation where there was only one military superpower remaining, but the danger is that military superpower is financially and economically today bankrupt. The dollar system, I've just completed a book which will be available in English in the next months. The dollar system has collapsed. In 2007, August, that dollar system definitively began a collapse process which will continue for at least a decade or more, in my estimation. And the collapse of that dollar pillar of American power projection means increasingly the temptation to rely on dramatic military shocks to maintain what the Pentagon calls full spectrum dominance. That, to my mind, is the most dangerous thing in the world today. And therefore, the debate within Western Europe, within the European Union, about the extension of NATO eastward, there's a very good reason why Germany and France refused to accept Ukraine and Georgia into NATO in the last months. They know that that means we're a mentally unstable president of Georgia or Ukraine, theoretically, to decide to go to war against Russia and claim that Russia invaded Georgia. It would be incumbent on France and Germany to go to war against Russia again, as they did in 1941 and as the case in the First World War. And I can tell you the generation of Europeans that are old enough today to remember the World War II, they do not want another war in this continent. So it's a highly dangerous situation. And the temptation, so far it hasn't been exercised, but I think it's very revealing that the president of change, Mr. Obama, has chosen a team on his defense policy, national security policy, that is the old paradigm. This is Robert Gates, the family retainer, CIA former director, friend of Father Bush. It's the chairman of the President's National Security Council and National Intelligence Estimate. These are all the Pentagon military establishment, and their whole view is how do we create a total domination, full spectrum dominance, they call it, of the planet, the air, the sea, the land, cyberspace. And